Tell you what, if you're in business and you're not sure what to do next, whether it's personal, whether it's about the company, whether it's about the growth plan, whatever, talk to someone who's been there, talk to someone who's done it. That's what we're going to do next. Jerry Engelhart on Purpose Under Pressure next. Well, the heat is on. Let's get cooking. This is Purpose Under Pressure. It's a podcast for you and from me and for each of us. It's all about us. It's people who wake up in the morning, swing their feet out of bed, put them on the floor, and get on with getting things done, and the pressures that come along and try to knock us off. And sometimes those pressures are huge. Sometimes they win. Sometimes we overtake them, and that's what this show is all about. So thank you for joining us. If you are back for more, thank you for returning. And if you don't mind, do me a favor. Would you subscribe to the show or follow us or like it? Tell your mom and dad, whatever you might need to do to get the word out. I appreciate that. There are those out there that don't know this show exists. And if we're going to impact them, they need to listen too. So if you don't mind helping me spread the word, I really do appreciate that. Purpose Under Pressure is brought to you by my friends at Sandler by the Ruby Group. They are serving sales professionals nationwide from their Akron and Columbus, Ohio locations. They're also doing it in Jacksonville, Florida. They provide sales training for your sales teams, business growth for your business leaders, your admin staff, everything that has to do with building a business on purpose the right way. That's what the Ruby Group is going to do for you. So they do it on purpose. They are one of the highest performing Sandler outlets in the nation, and they deserve that. So you could do yourself a favor just by reaching out. You will benefit just by talking to them on the phone. If you don't buy a thing, I promise you it'll be worth the call. You can reach out to them online at therubygroup.sandler.com. So this is Purpose Under Pressure, and we're talking about overcoming things. And I'm excited to introduce to you our guest today. He's Jerry Engelhart, and Jerry is the founder of Automated Print and Promo and also Comfort Control Clock. But I like to say, and he likes to say, that he's the chief problem solver. I think that's one of the greatest titles I've ever heard. I asked him before the show, is that every job you've ever done? He said, yeah, pretty much. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Jerry Engelhart, welcome to Purpose Under Pressure.
Thank you. Good to be here.
How do you apply for the job of chief problem solver? How does one get that esteemed position?
You buy a business.
Yeah. But isn't that easy? Wait, people think that when you buy a business, everything's easy then. You've got money coming out of your ears and you're sitting at home all the time. I mean, are there any problems? You just leave those to the little people, right?
Hey, listen, I work 80 hours a week and nobody can tell me which 80 hours I'm going to work.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Good for you. And so let's talk about that a little bit, Jerry. Introduce yourself to folks. Let us know what makes you tick. Let us know about your business. Kind of brag about yourself a little bit because you've overcome some things. Let's talk about your purpose first.
In 1990, I moved out of the accounting world. I bought a company called Porath Printing, which was a pretty small print shop located on the east side of Cleveland. My background is in accounting. I'm a recovering accountant. So I took that base of business and I built it over 20 years from 400,000 to about 2.5 million in annual revenue, primarily in the printing business. We pivoted in about 2020 and we sold off part of what I'm going to call the retail portion of the business, moving much more into an e-commerce platform, and then pursuing other entrepreneurial opportunities.
Hey, Jerry, what does an accountant know about owning a business? There are people out there listening that have a certain skill set and they've been it all their lives and they want to do something else. Tell me, how does that work where you are an accountant and now you're an owner?
Well, I think as an accountant, you understand how the money flows through a business. I'll call it the blood in the veins. What do you know about running a business? Not a damn thing.
Yeah. Is that a problem?
Well, when I, for example, went to college, I remember learning a lot of what you do and what you don't do, and how things work and how they don't work. And then you get into the real world and you realize what's in the textbooks is not necessarily what's in real life. The other thing too is I had worked for a Big 8 accounting firm. So there's a bureaucracy there. When you own your own business, you own it all. And it
That's it.
means that, if someone hasn't taken out the garbage, you get a chance to do that.
Hmm.
And it's not a bad thing, but every single facet of the business rests on your shoulders.
So I want to talk about the way you built the business. But first, for those listening who might be in the back of their heads unhappy where they are or in need of a new path or wanting to do something different, but aren't quite sure what it might be, what kind of struggles did you have making the switch? What changed? What kind of flipped on for you that you're like, holy cow, I got to figure this out fast?
Well, um, when I bought the business, the owner stayed on for 3 months, but he had already checked out.
Hmm.
So after 2 months, I actually looked him in the face and said, I'm going to have to learn how to drive this ship on my own. And I'd rather be driving it on my own and making mistakes in a position where I could pick up the phone and give you a call than for him on day 89 to say sayonara. And then what if I have a problem 2 days later and I don't have any recourse? So it meant that I literally had to walk into the plant. I had to look and see what people were doing, how they were doing it. And just, the computer in your head is going, 20 hours a day, just trying to take it all in and figure out what to do and how to do it.
And was there ever a moment where you looked at everything trying to figure it all out and said, geez, I should have stayed where I knew what I was doing. I should have stayed as an accountant. Was there ever that regret idea behind your?
Probably every day for the first 65 days.
Tell me about that.
Tell me about it. I had picked up and moved from Chicago. Gave up my support system. Gave up a lot of family. Picked up my wife's family in Cleveland. Um, had a reasonable business sense, but didn't know anything about the particulars. I'll remember one job. It's probably 2 or 3 weeks in. The owner had showed me how to calculate the cost of a job. And I calculated the cost of this job at about $65, the selling price of the job at about $65. And I see that my pressman is working on setting up this job for 2.5 hours.
Oh,
Now,
geez. Yeah, that doesn't add up.
$20 an hour, I'm talking about his cash in his pocket, $20 an hour. I
Hmm.
realized very quickly that I have like $55, $60 on the table. Guy hasn't even put the job on the press yet. So, you know, this is clearly a case of you're looking at this pool and you dive in and you figured out how to swim and how to float and sometimes just how to tread water to keep your head above the water. It was a very interesting year.
Yeah. And you've mentioned interesting year. You also mentioned about 65 days in, things started to turn around a little bit. And I'm wondering how you started to feel that. Was it something that changed? Did you do something different, or were you just getting comfortable? Because 65 days isn't a terrible amount of time other than the constant churning in your gut, right?
Well, I think I had my eyes open. I was learning. I was starting to become a little bit friendly with the people who were in the business working for me,
Hmm.
and the owner got out of my way.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what happened?
Um, then we started to find a little bit of a rhythm, and I started obviously to feeling a little bit more comfortable. But I would say it probably took a good 6 months before I really started seeing all the pieces come together. Um, the seller's mother was working in the business, and she was at that point becoming a bit toxic also. So she ended up leaving, which again was a good thing.
Hmm.
But at that point in time, I started to automate the business, put in a computer system, but didn't have any computers, didn't have anything like that in it other than for production. Um, and the ball starts to roll and it starts to pick up a little bit of momentum on its own. The other thing I will say is I'm thinking about this now. So I was an accountant.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. I had to go sell.
Yeah. Those
And
two don't think go together.
and COSI, the Council of Small Enterprises in Cleveland, put out a flyer for Sandler sales training.
Okay.
And I remember that direct mail piece was in my office for probably about 10 minutes before it was stamped and had the all my information checked off to go get sales training.
Okay.
And I started there on my route with Sandler. And it wasn't the Ruby Group because I don't think the Ruby Group was even around at that point in time, but it was another franchise entity. And
Mm-hmm.
then I started to learn how to sell. And that also, as I started to gain success from using the techniques of the sales training, that also started to build up confidence.
Yeah. Without this becoming a Sandler commercial, it's sales training is sales training, and selling well is selling well. What did you need to understand? What did you need to learn about selling? A lot of people are like, I don't want to be a salesman, but they're picturing somebody kicking tires in a lot on a Sunday, right? What did you learn about selling that really made a difference in your business?
Well, I think part of what I learned was to ask questions
Yes.
and to try and understand what the customer is trying to accomplish. And again, just simple techniques like, can you share with me what you're paying for the product now? Well, right away, that is a numbers guy. That gave me a target for me to be able to figure out: A, was the system that the system that the former owner taught me, was that working? Did it make any sense? And then it also taught me how to get stuff. How to
How,
how
how to
to
how to
just get into the client's head.
yeah, how to learn what you needed to learn to be able to solve the problems as a chief problem solver. I think that's what a salesperson is. I think a salesperson is, and I've been one for 35 54 years. It's my whole life. We solve problems for people, and we put pieces together to get it done. As you were growing through that, now you started to see some success. What was the next hurdle that happened in your business?
Well, we wanted to build. I wanted to build the business. The mother and son team that owned the business were eking out a living. And it's not a judgment, but and I was a young guy at the time, 30 some odd years old, and we had 3 kids at the time, and I needed to make a career out of this. So I needed to learn how to grow the business. And the first inflection point came when we were interviewing for a bookkeeper, and she had been working for a print broker. Why are you looking for a new job? They're going to close their doors. I said, really? Do they have a book of business? She
Helpful
says,
information to
yeah.
know.
And what are they going to do? I don't know. They're going to close their doors. So I got on the phone and I talked to her former employer, and I ended up buying their business. So that brought in probably another $200,000 worth of business
Yeah.
and gave me a salesperson. And that
That
was
came
the
from the
first.
business that had all the relationships already built and was building from there. Good.
And that was the first of 7 acquisitions we did.
Oh, wow. How over how many years?
Probably about 15.
Yeah. So almost just recently you haven't been acquiring very many, but almost the entire history of your business.
Yes.
Was your goal when you left as an accountant, was your goal to run your own business? Was it to start something and do something different? Was it to be more successful? Like, what was the driver when you decided to buy the business and to grow the business? Was it business sense, or was it something more personal?
Well, I would say it was very personal. Being an accounting guy, I was the controller of a company in Chicago, and I was hired to basically restructure their accounting department, put in a whole new software system, and they had a bunch of other goals. And they said, if you can get this done in a year, we would be thrilled. After 6 months, we had completed everything they had asked for, everything was running smoothly. And the biggest thing was their accounts receivable was down to below an average of 30 days. And they called me into their office and they said, we really appreciate everything you've done for us. And we're going to give you a 5%, a $500 raise, which amounted at that point in time to be about 1%.
I was going to say, not $500 a month, $500.
$500. And
Yeah.
I just remember thinking about that for a day or two and going, how am I going to grow like this? I mean, it's very subjective, etc. And if I could do this kind of thing for somebody else, why can't I try and do it for myself? So at that point, I said, I want to look for a business to buy.
Yeah. And so everything else that's happened since then has been along that same idea of how can I run things more efficiently and better and grow at the same time. Have you ever
100%.
swung and missed? Have you ever swung for something and missed? And tell me about that if so.
Yeah. We bought one company on the west side, and the guy basically convinced me that the second location on the west side was important because his customers were on the west side, blah, 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 blah. About a week and a half after we kind of did the deal, I called and I said, is Dave there? No, he's out. I said, oh, is Bob there? No, he's out. I said, they're both out? He says, yeah. Dave went to go put his boat in the water, and Bob's helping him. And this, I remember, was a Thursday afternoon at like noon. Like, what are these people doing? Well, they figured that since they had been brought in under our umbrella and were now getting salary, they could do whatever the hell they wanted.
Yeah.
And that relationship probably lasted 6 months before we closed down the location, brought everything in-house on the east side, and restructured his compensation plan so that if he didn't sell, he didn't eat.
Everyone in the organization needs to know how to sell. Sales is the strength of any company. Whether or not you're in marketing, operations, or even finance, everyone has a strong shared accountability towards driving top-line revenue. Whether or not you're client-facing or talking over the phone, you're able to build a stronger level of rapport with the clients. Everyone in the organization shares that responsibility to know how to sell.
All you can do is that. I think it's important that you realize that it's also hard to take the step to fix it. It's sometimes it'll take care of itself. I'm interested. One of the problems that businesses have nowadays, one of the biggest problems, is hiring and employment. And people will complain about the workforce and the availability of people who want to work. They'll talk about how to motivate a worker. They'll talk about, you'll see a sign out there for, $15 an hour, $18 an hour, $24 an hour. I don't think it makes a difference anymore. I think people have changed. What have you learned through owning these businesses over time that's allowed you to make good decisions as far as your employee base, keeping people or maybe generating new opportunities to work for you?
Well, most of my employees have been with me for a long, long time.
Is that right?
Most of my turnover, most of it came from female employees who had babies.
Starting families, yes.
Starting families, and I absolutely refuse to try and give them any kind of pressure to come back to work. No. If they could stay home with their kid, then you know what? You need to do that because you only have one chance at raising your kid, and you'll have a bajillion opportunities to make money over the course of your life. But we're a family. I mean, we're a family-run business, and we are very much personable with our people. We trust them. We expect them to do what they're supposed to do. We don't micromanage. And in the course of my career, I've learned from mentors and coaches or whatever to clearly express your goals and what you expect them to do and stay out of their way, which is the hardest part of all that. It's not them doing the work, it's that you empowering them to do what they need to do. And they're happy. And if they're happy, then it's not easy for them to go find another place. Over the course of our career, I've had 3 or 4 people who've quit, and within 2 weeks, kind of came knocking on the door asking if their positions were still open because the grass was not greener.
No, the grass is only green where you water it, is something I read recently. I'm interested in whether the things that you did to keep them there, the family idea, the approach, is that something, how do I ask this? It's so hard, I think, to trust others with your own business, and yet you seem to be able to do it. Is it something you constantly struggle with? And how are you able to actually make it so that it's something you kind of quote unquote brag about?
I would say that it has to do with, I'm going to use the word challenging them, but in a positive manner, and teaching them and mentoring them and treating them with respect. It's a little story. I was out of town for a couple weeks. My wife had surgery, and I was gone for 6 weeks. And I came back in town, and it was a Thursday. I came back, and I said, we're having lunch on Friday. So I said, I'm bringing in lunch.
Yeah.
Well, I brought in lunch, but I also brought in, and we have a team of 6 people, 6 bags with a rotisserie chicken and a couple sides. And I put that in the refrigerator, and we had lunch. I thanked them all for holding down the fort. And then I looked and I said, and tonight when you go home, dinner's on me. In the fridge are 6 bags. They all have the same thing. It's, a rotisserie chicken, a couple sides.
Yeah.
You guys really worked hard. You covered all the bases. And now you can go home on a Friday evening and just throw something in the oven for a little bit and kick your feet up and don't now have to worry about dinner. And 2 people started crying.
Yeah. And it's just chicken and some sides. It doesn't have to be $1 billion. It doesn't have to be benefits. Just a little bit of respect and compassion, right?
One of them looked up at me and said, it's the first time I've had a boss thank me and do something like this. And I'm going like, what? I mean, I'm like 65 years old and she's older than I am. And she's saying this is the first time that a supervisor of hers said, thank you. And I want to do something nice for you. I was blown away.
That shouldn't be the case. It should happen all the time, and it can happen all the time. So I'm interested. You mentioned age a little bit, and I don't pretend to know how old you are now, but I know you've got fewer years ahead of you to work than you've put in. Let's put it that way. One of the things that businesses have trouble with sometimes is they build this big thing and they don't know what to do next. That idea of a transition plan. What's next for you, and what's next for your company as you move forward?
Well, we've changed our business from being what I'm going to call a commercial printing company, which at our apex had about 20 employees. We're now down to 6. But our business is now it's running e-commerce sites, internal e-commerce sites for multi-location businesses. So if you have a business with 20 locations, we will inventory all your product, your sales product, your forms, whatever, and then the outlying offices can go on an e-commerce site and they can place an order for whatever product they need. Someone at corporate looks it over and says, oh, they need 1,000 letterheads and 1,000 pocket folders or whatever. Yeah, that's reasonable, and they'll approve it, and we handle everything from there. So I have a team of people on the ground that pick, pack, ship. We have software, heavily invested in software that keeps track of everything. Um, and that, with that business going on there, we have been able to explore new business opportunities. So at the ripe old age of 65, I'm actually becoming an entrepreneur again because we have a
Love it.
product called the Comfort Control Clock, which is a tool that allows people to keep track of alternating pain medication to mitigate pain after a surgery.
Oh,
So
okay.
we have launched that business, and now we're trying to figure out how do you take it to market, which is a whole new experience for me because I used to be manufacturing. Now I'm trying to figure out how do you literally market it, not sell it, but how do you market it so
Yeah.
people
How do
know
people
you
find
exist?
out about this thing? Yeah. And what have you learned so far?
Um, well, our primary marketplace is medical, and in the whole social media explosion, that's not the right way to market to them. We spent a
Okay.
year on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, email campaigns, or whatever, and we do know for a fact that's not the right way to grab the attention of medical people.
Okay. Is there
So,
any way to grab the attention of medical people
well,
other
we're
than knocking on
learning
a
that.
door, old salesman?
We're learning that now.
Yeah.
We're talking to people who have taken medical products, tools to market.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to talk to um, former hospital administrators, retired people. What's the way to get in the door?
Yeah.
So it's a whole new learning experience.
Yeah. But once you're in and you're doing things right and you're talking to the right people in the right way and treating people with the purpose and dignity that you need to do, the rest comes easy. It's getting in there in the first place that makes the difference. I'm wondering, Jerry, if as we kind of wrap up, you're 65 years into this grand spin on the planet, and you're doing great things, and you've accomplished great things. Looking back, what would you tell 26-year-old Jerry Engelhart, 30-year-old Jerry Engelhart, when he was trying to figure things out? What would you tell him?
I think I would tell him learn your business from top to bottom, and as soon as you possibly can, teach teach your people what to do and how to do it. Imbue your philosophy, which I can tell you right now, take care of the customer. Everything else is irrelevant. Make sure the customer walks away feeling good. I have a friend of mine, the back of his business card says it's all about the experience.
Hmm.
And if you really think about business, it's all about the experience. You know, you can have the most dynamite product, and if you make someone feel like crap about it, they're going to walk away. And how many people do you know are selling something that's a piece of garbage, but man, they
They're
love
killing it.
dealing with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But teach other people to do, and then figure out what your best and highest use is, and focus on that, and not on the mundane.
Tremendous. And I love the fact that the same thing you're telling the 30-year-old Jerry, you're listening to now. You're trying to figure out how to talk to these medical professionals, trying to figure out what makes them kind of get excited, figuring out how you can give them a great experience. And it's amazing that the same simple advice you would give is something that you're telling yourself right now. Do you think about that?
Yeah, big time. And learn. No matter what you do, learn. The more knowledge you can get, the more. I'm not going to. The first thing that came to mind is powerful, but I don't mean that in terms of ego. I mean
Right.
it in terms of strength.
Being able to make a difference, right?
Being able to make a difference, being able
Mm-hmm.
to work your way through a problem, being able to call up somebody and say, "Hey, I'm not sure how to do this." And people are always willing to help. And that's one of the things I learned from Sandler, which is people love to help you out. You just got to ask them. And
Just
most
got to ask him.
people in general have too much pride to say, "Hey, can you help me out here? I just can't figure this out."
Yeah. And if you can become that person who exudes hey, I want to help you. People are far more easier to raise their hand, and now you've got a conversation, you've got a sales opportunity. It's not really rocket science, is it?
Right. Right.
Jerry, if someone wanted to learn, I've learned from you now here in business, and I imagine you've learned a lot and you probably don't mind teaching others. But if someone wanted to learn more about your company or even just, maybe even business advice, if they wanted to reach out to you, how would they reach you?
Best thing is email. And the email is GERRYE at automatedprintandpromo.com.
Last question, Jerry. It just popped into my head. There's a 30-year-old rock star out there listening to the show right now, and he knows everything. What can a 30-year-old rock star who knows everything learn from a couple of old geezers like you and me?
Don't think you're a rock star at age 30.
That's probably about it, isn't it?
Think of yourself as a student that has a whole empty notebook that you can fill with knowledge, and go find people who can help you fill that notebook with knowledge.
I love that. That is great advice, and that's how we will end this show, folks. I know there's people out there just like I was, just like Jerry was, that are thinking, what am I going to do next? There's too much pressure. I've got a family to take care of. I've got a house bill to pay. I've got responsibilities. And so they're afraid to take that next step, to step out of their comfort zone and do something different. And like Jerry just said, just go figure it out. Be open to learning, be open to opportunity, be open to risk, and just continue to learn. And we can learn a lot from people like Jerry. We can learn a lot from people in our businesses that have done it before. And like Jerry said before too, you just need to ask. A lot of wisdom there. That's Jerry Engelhart, Chief Problem Solver. I love that title. I need to hire one of those here. I guess that'd be me. And he's also the owner of Automated Print and Promo and Comfort Control Clock, which he is building to the next great company as he does it. Thank you very much, Jerry Engelhart, being my guest on Purpose Under Pressure. Show is brought to you by Sandler by the Ruby Group. We gave them a couple of plugs here today, and that is not because they paid for it. That is because they deserve it. Sellers are under pressure to perform, and Sandler helps you to succeed on purpose. You're going to find all past episodes of Purpose Under Pressure at brianmediastrategies.com/podcast and wherever you stream your favorite shows. We do this every week. I hope you enjoyed this show, and we'll see you next time on Purpose.